means that it will be available for you to view again on our website. If you go onto our website and you search webinar, you'll come to the webinar page and you'll be able to find it really easily. As will all the resources that are used today as well. They will be available, and from our previous sessions too. It's probably worth noting that when we start to move out of this lockdown, we'll be reinvigorating our membership offer, and the webinars will be part of that membership offer. So take advantage of it now while we're opening up our services to everybody, to make sure that you get the resources that you need and that you've watched previous webinars that you weren't able to attend. So thank you everybody for coming. We're very lucky today to be joined by Kirsty Pemberton from Citizens Advice, and she's going to talk us through the EU settlement scheme, and how we as a community can support our EU and EAA residents to be able to achieve settled status, but also probably in some ways more importantly, get the support that is available to help them to do that while that support is available. We've got Emily and we've got Joe from our DCA team who are here with us this morning. Look, that waving, just so that you know who they are. They'll be manning the chat facility for us. So if you do have any questions at all at any time, please put them in. If we can't answer them this morning, we will endeavour to answer them and put them onto the webinar page so that they are available for everybody to be able to see later. So I'm going to now share my screen. Which hopefully you'll be able to see. Now I have got a very, very short video that I'll be showing in the next slide, which I'm going to be looking to Ray to tell me that you can hear the sound. If the sound doesn't come on, I will just stop the video and I will just tell you what it said. So don't panic if you think you've lost your hearing when it starts. That could be the errors on my end. So last week, we went through quite a comprehensive breakdown of the new lockdown, the third one, and the government guidance and the legislation that goes with it. So if you want a more thorough breakdown, I would recommend going back to last week's session to go through either the webinar or just go through the notes and the handouts that went with it. We're just really doing just a quick recap summary for people today. So the overriding message that's coming through from this lockdown, very similar to lockdown number 1, is stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives. And the reason in a way that we've gone back to this messaging more than we did in the second lockdown is because the NHS is under quite intense pressure, more pressure than it was during its peak in April. So it is very important that we do what we can, the same as we did during our first lockdown, to make sure that we are minimising contact with people so that we're minimising the spread, and therefore we're minimising the number of people who become infected and end up in hospital. In Dorset, we're seeing about a 17% weekly increase in cases that end up in hospital. And of those, we're seeing a comparable 17% that are ending up on ICU and critical care. That's way in excess of where we were in April. So Dorset is now really feeling the effect. So although our numbers, say in comparison to Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, might seem much lower, for us as an area, the numbers are significantly greater. We also have to remember we share our hospital systems with Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. So although we're seen as separate areas, when it comes to the rate of infection and the number of people hospitalised, we impact upon each other. So everything that we can do to bring those numbers down is going to have a big impact. So I'm just going to play a short snippet really from yesterday's enforcement video. And this is Martin Hewitt, who is the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council.
It's very clear that we're now at the most dangerous stage of the pandemic. There is a real and present risk that our health service could be overwhelmed and people, our friends and family, could die needlessly from this virus. So we must all play our part in stopping that from happening.
So it's a very short snippet, but I think it kind of sums things up really, really well, that at this moment in time, we must all do our part to make sure that we minimise those infection opportunities that could result in people going into hospital. With the rollout of the vaccines, which we're going to talk about in just a few moments, we should be seeing the most vulnerable members of our community beginning to be protected from the virus. And that's fantastic. But that rollout is only just happening. And that means there will be a delay from having the vaccine to having some level of immunity. And there will also be people that haven't had their first vaccine yet. So to start kind of putting our foot off the brake at this point would be a mistake. We have to still stay at home to protect those people that are the most vulnerable. So the summary guidance from the latest lockdown legislation has, as I said before, the biggest emphasis is about staying at home and only being outside of home for particular exempt reasons. And one of those reasons this time, which wasn't there last time, was volunteering. So it's actually inbuilt into the legislation. But unfortunately, I think that sometimes causes a little bit of confusion because it's important to remember that we should be volunteering from home if possible. If we can't volunteer from home, then we must still be staying as local as possible in what we're providing. So if you are being asked by your agency or by anybody who is coordinating volunteering to travel long distances, it's really important that you double check with them that that is absolutely essential. If you're the only one that can do it and somebody's life or somebody's well-being is at risk, then that's going to be essential and it's going to meet that guidance. But it is important to check. And I would say we should all take a personal responsibility in that check. There's been a lot of talk about exercise and a lot of talk about what being local means. But I think what we can safely say is that we don't want lots and lots of people from outside of Dorset travelling to our beautiful county to come and do their daily exercise. So we need to make sure that we push that local message out as much as possible to prevent that from happening. And one of the ways that we can make it easier for our police force to enforce is by making sure that we stay local. So if we travel long distances across our county to go from one beauty spot to another, what we do is we potentially spread the infection, but also we make it harder for our police to monitor who is travelling around our county and whether they live outside of our county or whether they're just travelling inside. At the same time, if you live in an area where you have limited capacity to go outside and walk, then there isn't an objection to travelling a short distance that will take you somewhere where you can walk. We know that there have been incidences where the police have perhaps overly enforced in these circumstances, but we're seeing now that that's changing. And the police themselves are recognising that actually they need to be just a little bit more flexible when it comes to that parameter. But if you're crossing out of the county, they're not going to be that flexible. If you're traveling for 20 minutes to go somewhere, they're not going to be that flexible. And if we can set an example in Dorset of what local means and staying local, then it makes it much harder for us to argue with people who might travel outside of Dorset and come into Dorset. So the other area that was kind of back on the agenda very much was the clinically extremely vulnerable, or the CEV group. We are using the term shielding again now. There isn't quite the same level of support that we saw at the beginning in March, and that's partly because people have developed support systems. We also do have volunteers on hand who can help with things like shopping, picking up of prescriptions. So there has been a change in the structure of the support that people need. But that doesn't mean that there isn't help available for people that are outside of that, who are feeling cut off and are feeling vulnerable. And the link here will take you to, sorry, not link here, link on the next slide, will take you through to the Dorset Council, to where you actually can access help and support. And of course, you can signpost people to the council support as well. You can, if you know of somebody who's vulnerable, you can support them to also ring the volunteer centre, and they will also be able to signpost a volunteer to offer support. So that's another option that is available. If you know of anybody who falls into the clinically extremely vulnerable group, and they will be contacted by their GP, so that's the main way that they'll know that they are, unless they look at the list, which is what the link on here is, I would advise them to register for support. They may not feel that they need it now, but it will make it easier for them to access in the future. They will need their NHS number, which they'll find on a prescription, or a letter from their doctor. And when they go on and register, they will be asked the question about whether they need support and the type of support they might need. So it does allow that immediate response to people who may be vulnerable. So from terms of reference of our charitable organisations, One of the big questions we tend to get is around community centres and halls, and it's worth mentioning that you should be closed except where you are being used to provide essential voluntary services, education and training, childcare provision, and support groups. And just a reminder, support groups can only be up to 15 people, and there should be a reason why it is beneficial to meet face to face. And there are lots of reasons why that is because of the nature of the group. But it is important that that's maintained. A support group is not an exercise group. A support group is there to be able to support groups of people, and they are listed on our previous slides if you're unsure. But people that may be substance abuse users, they may be victims of domestic violence, so they may need that actual personal touch of being part of a group where you can actually see each other face to face rather than something that might feel a bit more anonymous online. So it is important to continue to offer that service if you can. If you can't, if for some reason that you have to close, maybe because you don't have enough staff or volunteers, and a support group is looking for a venue, do make sure you contact us. We can help that group put in touch with another organisation that may be able to host them. So as I mentioned before about the support that's available, this is the link which will take you through to Dorset Council. And it is worth making sure that others that you support are aware of that. If you're putting out a newsletter, making sure that you include it. There is other support that's available, such as a one-off payment for people that are isolating, who've been contacted by Test and Trace. And of course, there is help out there for people that might be going through financial difficulties. This is a really, really tough time for people. And Citizens Advice have put together an absolutely excellent leaflet to support people who are being furloughed. And it's written from the point of view of the person being furloughed rather than the employer. And that makes it really beneficial to people. So it's really worth handing out to anybody that you may be in the process of furloughing. We're still waiting to hear about the announcement that was made by the Chancellor about the new retail, hospitality and leisure grants. We will obviously contact you as soon as we're aware of them and know that they go live. If you sign up to the Dorset Council business advice newsletter, you'll also get information through your inbox and your email, which will be able to signpost you directly as well. So that way you should hear from either us or the council. There is the job retention scheme. It is still available. It hasn't been altered this time round, so it's from the adaptations that were made back in November. So it is worth mentioning that employees need to have been employed before the 30th of October to be eligible. The timeline of that didn't move this time because no amendment has been made. It's open to employees who haven't previously been furloughed, and it's so far set to run until April of 2021. There's also been an extension of the self-employment income support scheme as well. And remember as well to have a look at other financial support so that you're aware of what to signpost your clients to. So I've put a couple of slides on here, which I'm not going to go through in detail, but just so that you've got reference within this presentation of methods of support and contact telephone numbers for support, particularly around signs and symptoms and financial support. Remember that Dorset Community Action are here to support all of groups, all VCSE groups in Dorset with any needs that they may have, and that includes financial. So if you're struggling to find the funding that you need to remain open, contact us and we will make an appointment and go through what you need. From our last session that we did last week, there were quite a few questions that came up. And Ray very diligently went through all of the questions and through the slides and pulled out all of the links to all of the support and information that was asked for. So this is quite a nice reference point really from everything from talking about Dorset Digital. So if you're looking to support either your volunteers or your staff to become more digitally aware, or you've got people that you're supporting who need that help with digital, Dorset Digital is there to help you. Right the way through for guidance around tiers, which is from ACRE, which will support you in looking at, when we probably come out the other side of this, what we might be looking at going back to. But also, if you look at tier 4 guidance, that's very, very close to where we are now with lockdown. So a lot of that will still be applicable. So just a little vaccination update for you. So We know that it's being rolled out now at quite a pace in Dorset. We've got 14 centres that are open now across the county. And there will probably be further announcements this week of other centres that are opening up too. It's being run at a very local level, so it's being GP led. And of course, it's based around supply. So our supply comes into Dorset County Hospital, and then the announcements are made to GPs about what their allocation will be, and then they're able to book appointments. The system is working well, but some people obviously are going to be concerned that they've not heard anything. And it's really, really important that we look at, sorry, I clicked when I didn't mean to, and I've clicked twice, excuse me. Um, it's really very important that we don't contact our GPs just to find out about vaccinations. They are working at full pelt. They're not sitting on information that they're not sharing. You will be contacted when you are eligible for a vaccination. And that's the advice we've got to get out to our community as well, as much as possible, that they will be contacted once they are eligible. If we've got lots of people ringing up our GPs to find out when they're going to be eligible for an appointment, that's a lot of dead time for our GPs and their practices to deal with, that they're not actually administering medication or booking people for appointments. So it's important that we use that information wisely. So the phasing that's been set out by the government is based around need, and this has come from the joint vaccination group. And they've highlighted the top 4 areas for vaccination are residents in care homes, all those 80 years of age and over, frontline health and social care workers, all those 75 years of age and over, and all those 70 years of age or over, and clinically extremely vulnerable individuals. The aim is to have all of those groups vaccinated once by February the 15th. That's their target, which they feel very confident that they're on target for and that supply will be available to meet those numbers. If they manage that, that will mean that 88% of the current fatalities have fallen within these groups. So the level of protection that provides against the consequences of going into hospital and of losing people to COVID-19 is greatly reduced. They'll then begin rolling out to the other groups. And we haven't had as much detail around these groups. We know that occupation may play a part in some of the designating of this, but that hasn't been clarified as yet. If we get down to level 9, which is the aim that they have by the end of the summer, then we will be looking at about 99% of those currently who have died falling into those groups. So that's quite a significant proportion of people that have been badly affected by this. So just a quick reminder, and I'm not going to go into this, but just a quick reminder with the clinically extremely vulnerable that these are the groups that we're talking about. It is important that we separate this out from other people who are vulnerable due to age. And of course, age has been added as its own category. So it's important that we kind of split it out slightly when we're talking in relation to the vaccines. One really good inclusion has been that carers are being included in this too. So when they come to look at clinically extremely vulnerable vaccinations, they'll also be looking at their carers, because they're aware that, of course, if their carers get struck down, the impact that could have is so colossal for people who are extremely clinically extremely vulnerable, that actually it could negate almost the benefit they get themselves from having the vaccine. So that's a really good step forward that carers are included in that. And again, you will be contacted when they come to that phase of the vaccinations. I wanted to highlight something that we've been circulating and has been on our webpage and went out in our web news, is an open letter that was shared by the CCG and NHS. And I don't expect you to be able to read this from the screen. The link is next to it. So if you'd like to read it in full, please do click on the link. But it's a really nice letter from all of the joint heads of CCG and NHS in Dorset, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. And it's saying a thank you for all of the work that people are doing, excuse me, and for the volunteering that has been going on. But it's also highlighting the importance of that stay at home message and making sure that we protect the most vulnerable in our community. It's highlighting too the importance of continuing to attend appointments. Areas of hospitals where appointments are happening are being kept as COVID secure as possible. So you're not putting yourself at extreme risk by going. In fact, if there's anywhere in the country that's going to have really, really good infection control, it's going to be the outpatients department in a hospital. so you can take confidence in that when you've got appointments that you need to go to. And if you are unwell, you should still continue to use the services as you would before, ringing 111, ringing 999 if it's an emergency, and making sure that you follow the advice that you're given. There's also a really nice little video of the story so far around vaccinations, which is worth watching. And if you have the capacity on your website to share, it's definitely worth doing. So that big message, which we're being asked to spread from CCG and from NHS, is don't call us, we'll call you. And I've kept this slide quite sort of discreetly put together so that actually you can cut this slide out if you wanted to use it as a poster or if you wanted to put it on your own website. So that's quite important so that we can spread this message in our community. It's the number one ask that we've had from the CCG and the NHS is, can we get this message out to people to minimise those disruptive calls to GPs? So how can you help? Well, there are several ways. If you know of people who would be interested in supporting the NHS through contracted work, and that includes supporting the vaccination movement. So if they're retired NHS staff or they're clinically able to give vaccinations, then go through that top support here, the link here for the NHS support. They are doing it under contract, so we don't have any volunteer vaccinators in this country. They will all be under contract, which means that all of the regimes that will be carried out, doesn't matter where you go or who gives you your vaccination, they'll be fully qualified to do so and up to date on all the latest knowledge around giving a vaccination. There are some other posts that they're currently trying to recruit for, including admin and cleaning roles. So please do have a look on there if you want to share job opportunities with any of your clients. We're still recruiting vaccination marshals. We've had such an extraordinary response to this. I think in total across Pan Dorset, we've had over 1,500 people, I think, that have come forward and put themselves up for volunteer marshals, which sounds a lot, but actually it's not that many when you start spreading it across the county and people doing odd shifts here and there. So if you have the time, if you have the capacity, if you know people who have the time and capacity, please forward that on to them. And of course, volunteering, as always, register to become a volunteer if you would like to in a more general capacity, or if you're part of a group, make sure you're signed up to the volunteer centre to get all the support that's available. So thank you, Dorset Together, thanks you. We think you're amazing. We think the work that you're doing is amazing, and we just want it to continue. Stay safe. And on that note, I'm going to pass this over to Kirsty. I'm going to stop sharing actually, first of all, then I'll pass this over to Kirsty to talk us through the EUSS scheme. So thank you, everybody, and over to Kirsty.
Thanks, Paula. That was really informative. Really nice to see all those bits of information pulled together. You don't see that very often, so really helpful for everyone, I'm sure. For those of you who haven't met me, I know there's several people on the call that I've met and work with, in fact. So nice to see you all, nice to meet you. My name's Kirsty. I'm a project coordinator for the Citizens Advice in BCP. I run a couple of projects, one of which is the EU Settlement Scheme project, which is a Dorset-wide project, which is why I'm on here speaking to you guys. And I need to ask for your help at this time because we're coming towards the end of our allotted funding from the Home Office for this project. At the moment, the project's only funded up until March of this year, which it may be extended and we hope it is, but there's no way of knowing when you're talking about the Home Office. So that's why I'm talking to you all now about this. I'm going to share my screen with you and go through some slides on what the EU settlement scheme is, because I know it can seem confusing. Actually, it's not that confusing, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll get a grip as to what it is and what it means for you or your clients or people that you interact with. But always, if there's any questions, please ask them in the chat bar, and I can always get back to you individually, or I can liaise with Paula and the team to get back to you at a later date. I'm going to share my screen with you now. Hopefully it will work. There we go. Paula, can you see that? Okay. All right. So the EU settlement scheme. Let's see how we can best go through these. Right, there we go. So we'll cover what the project is and the background, who we are, what we're doing and how we're doing it, and what we have done, because it's been running now for about 18 months. And then lastly, I'm going to tell you all what to do if you need help or if you find people within your communities that need help and assistance. So as we're all well aware, we've now left the EU. The Christmas period was obviously very stressful for a lot of people when they were not sure about what we were going to do once we'd left the EU, whether we would in fact have a deal. But we now know that we have a deal and we've left the EU. So following the vote to leave the EU, all EU nationals living within the UK are required to register under the EU settlement scheme. And that's the main reason for that is so that they can maintain their rights. The reason that we want people to apply is so that they don't have any issues in the future when it comes to their immigration status. And so it's more people-centric for us than it is about, you know, registering in terms of the Home Office. It's about protecting those individual rights in the future. Current legislation says that we need to ensure everyone does this by June of this year. However, we have been told by the Home Office that there will be some flexibility around this. We don't yet have legislation that proves that there will be flexibility. So that's why we are trying to encourage everyone that we can to register before that date. Applicants must have been resident in the UK before the end of 2020. That's really important. Even if it was just for one day, they can still apply to the scheme, but they must have been resident in the country by the end of last year. And the application is free and it can be done online, and we have the support to enable people to do it online if they don't have access. So the project itself is here really to provide that practical element of help and support for vulnerable people across Dorset and BCP. It's funded by the Home Office, as I said, and they've put grant funding in place for lots of organisations across the country, hopefully an equal spread across the country, although there are pockets of places that have less support than others, to enable as many people as possible who are vulnerable to apply to the scheme, as well as those that aren't vulnerable who may need assistance. So some vulnerabilities that, you know, we will cover are the elderly, anyone who's technologically impaired, who has no access to technology, those who have little, you know, verbal or written skills in English, who may not understand the application, and that can be a big barrier and hurdle for people to overcome. So those are just a few examples of people that we've been supporting. So we lead on the project, we provide caseworkers to help people, and we have a range of support options that are available there for people to use. So we have some team members who work for DREC, who I'm sure you all are aware of, Dorset Race Equality Council. Some of them are on this call. Christine, hello. Christine has been engaging with the community across Dorset to try and raise awareness of the scheme for the last 18 months. And we have been working in partnership to kind of ensure that we round up as many people as possible, because we really don't want to leave anyone behind. So we want to make the process as accessible for people as possible, because I know it can seem that it's scary and formal doing this online or interacting with the government and the Home Office at all. So we want to provide that support for people. This is just a list for reference for everyone of the countries that are included in the EU and the EEA, because there are several kind of outside the norm situations. So for example, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway are not in the EU, but they're in the EEA. And then there's different rules about the Republic of Ireland and people from places like Latvia. So this is here for your reference if you need it in the future. But if there's any doubt, always contact us. If you know someone or work with someone who you think maybe hasn't applied to the scheme but should apply, first of all, just speak to them, ask them, where is their passport from? What nationality are they? Have they ever naturalised as a British citizen? If they haven't, and they have an EU or EEA passport, then they need to apply for the scheme if they haven't. And they'll either be given settled or pre-settled status, depending on how long they've been in the country. If they've been in the UK for less than 5 years, they'll get pre-settled status. And if they've been here for over 5 years, they will get settled status. We talk about 5 years continuous residence, but really that means you have to have been in the UK for more than 6 months each year within the past 5 years. And pre-settled status, obviously it means that, you know, you get that if you've been here less than 5 years, and you can have left the country in that time as well for up to 6 months a year. But as long as you're here for 6 months, you'll be able to get pre-settled or settled status. So settled status means that someone can stay in the UK without a time limit, and they are ordinarily resident in the UK. They can lose that status if they leave the country for more than 2 years. And they can live in the UK as if they are a British citizen. So they can claim benefits, use the NHS, use all of the resources that are available to British citizens. Pre-settled status does give fewer rights. It does mean that you, at the moment, may not be able to claim some means-tested benefits like universal credit. And we are seeing a slew of court cases in the High Court regarding this at the moment, so that may change. We hope it does change, because at the moment it's not really working for people that we have met. As I said, you can stay as long as you've been here resident in the UK for 1 day in the last before Christmas. So as long as you've been here before that time, you're entitled to apply, and you don't have to apply for a visa to come here if you're here up to that time. So as I said, there has been some court cases with regards to benefits. Now, currently in the High Court, they've ruled that it's against the law for the British government to discriminate against those with pre-settled status. It means that at the moment, those with pre-settled status may be able to claim means-tested benefits, but the Department for Work and Pensions is contesting this. So what we would like to ensure that people know is that if they have been here for 5 years or longer, they should try to get settled status. If they are at first refused that status, and they think that they have been refused unjustly, they can appeal, and we're here to help with that. It may be that they didn't provide the right or enough evidence to prove their settled status. So we would advise that we are here to help. We have very experienced caseworkers. They've been helping people with applications for over 18 months, and come to us with any queries. There are benefits, as it says on this slide, that aren't means tested, that will continue for those with pre-settled and settled status, like DLA. So the form itself, the application, it's online. We can request a paper copy if we need to, but usually those are only issued in exceptional circumstances, which might include, for example, a resident in a care home who has dementia. It might be that we need a paper form to go and visit them and to fill it in with their carers. It might be that a paper form is more applicable for certain people who don't have the right ID documents. So there are reasons and ways that we can get around the online form if we need to. Identity needs to be proved, usually using a biometric ID card or passport. Most passports and ID cards that have been issued in the last 5 years throughout the EU are biometric. However, if it's not biometric, the card or the passport can be sent off as well if it needs to be. We can help people with the technology around this, so the passport or ID card will need to be scanned. And it is available, although it says here it's on Android devices only, it is available on the Apple devices now as well. It's just sometimes we have encountered some glitches with that. People will need proof of residence, which is usually the format of a national insurance number. If they don't have a national insurance number, they will be asked for other proof of residence, which we can assist with. And they will lastly be asked if they have any convictions or pending court cases when they apply for the scheme. Parents can apply for children under 21, and the applications will be linked with their parents' application. So the child should receive the same status as their parents. And then we can also make sure that a child can apply for themselves in situations where they need to. For example, if they're a looked after child, we can assist, and we are assisting with Dorset Council's team in helping those children apply. And as I said, the linked applications mean that parents and children won't be separated in terms of their status. They'll have the same status, but each child does need to be applied for separately. So what we've done so far, during the last year and a half, we've helped over 2,500 people apply to the scheme, and that isn't including recent numbers as well. So I think we can add another approximately 400 to 500 people to that since September. We've interacted with over 20,000 people in the county regarding the scheme. So we're trying to get the word out there as best we can, and hopefully you have heard of us before. However, that has its limitations. As you'll know, working and living in Dorset, there are pockets of our county where it might not get through, the message might not get through, it might be harder for us to penetrate. So we need your assistance in reaching those parts of the county where we may not have been able to touch before, because only 50% of residents within Dorset that we think are EU nationals have applied. Now those figures are not entirely accurate. There is no available data for the number of residents within any part of the UK that are EU nationals, because during the period of free movement, people were able to come and go as they pleased. So those are projected figures from the Office of National Statistics, and going with their higher projection, we assume that only 50% of people in Dorset have applied, whereas in BCP, it's presumed that approximately 97% of the higher estimated figure have applied. Now, we may go over that percentage for BCP, which just goes to show that we don't know how many people are living in our areas that are EU nationals. So we just need your help to find those people that we may be missing. So as I said, we'll be here until the end of March to help those people that need advice and assistance. We can offer several ways of helping. So during the pandemic, we have set up a robust service where one of our caseworkers offers face-to-face appointments and is still offering those appointments during lockdown. Those appointments are available at the moment at Bournemouth Central Library. However, there are other places throughout Dorset that we can offer appointments if we need to. And we will make sure that those appointments are taking place in as COVID secure a location as is possible, and that they are as convenient for people as possible. Obviously, we're asking people to work with us during the pandemic because it is harder for us to get to a huge variety of places like we have done before, but we will always try and make ourselves available as close to the person as we can do. We can also help telephonically. So we have a caseworker who's only helping over the telephone, and she will walk through step by step with a person if they have a device at home they can use. So she will guide that person through the whole process, start to finish. We're also offering support over video chat, which we've used throughout lockdown and has been really helpful. And then we can also offer initial consultations or assistance via email. And all of those ways of contacting us are on this presentation at the end, and I'll make sure you have that. We're also offering some support clinics in terms of people who have applied to the scheme. Now, once they've applied and received a status, they don't get that status in any written format. It's only accessible online. And that's been a big problem for lots of vulnerable people, because they want to have a card or a piece of paper that says you have pre-settled or settled status. Now, despite lots of campaigning from ourselves and other bodies, the government won't give in or haven't given in so far to that demand. So people need help in understanding how to access their status online and how to prove it. So to prove it to the job centre or to an employer are the two main queries, or to the housing department. So we're offering some support clinics around that. We've run the first one at the end of last year at the Central Library in Bournemouth, but we've also offered our presentation that we give at the support clinic to all of our clients. So it will either be mailed to them, or it can be gone through over video chat, or it can be emailed to someone, and it just walks them through step by step how to access their status and how to use it in the future. If they need to update any details, so if they've got a new passport and a new passport number, if they get married and they need to update their name, all of those things need to be known by the clients that are applying for the scheme, so that they're not left at the end of our support thinking, what do I do now? It's really important that they know that information. If a case is too complex for us to help with, we have support in terms of level 2 and 3 immigration advice. That isn't provided locally, but we have got a person that we work with who can come into the local area if a case is very urgent. But we will be able to support people with applying to the scheme if it's a complex case as well. So this is just a kind of snapshot of the people that might be at risk that we've established over the last year. So one of the main ones that we've come across in Dorset is very long-term residents. So that's people that may have lived in our county or in the country as a whole 50, 60 years, but they may never have naturalised as a British citizen. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have the right to stay here. They may have a piece of paper or a stamp in their passport saying that they have indefinite leave to remain. However, we would still advise people to apply, because when they try and come in and out of the country in the future, it will be much harder for them to prove that they're able to come in. They won't be able to come in under free movement, so they'll have to take that piece of paper with them everywhere they go. Whereas if their digital status is linked to their passport, they'll be able to get through immigration control much more easily. Also, there's a risk of them losing that piece of paper, and that's the only thing that really will prove that they have the right to stay here. Believe it or not, the Home Office don't keep a central record of everyone that they've issued that paperwork to, which we've discovered over the last year. So that paperwork may be their only proof, and we don't want that going forward. Children of EU citizens, if both parents are an EU citizen and haven't naturalised as British, they don't necessarily have British nationality themselves as a child. So we need to establish that whether they have British nationality. If they don't, they need to apply. People with permanent residence, that doesn't mean that they have indefinite leave to remain, and they still need to apply. And there may be people who are rejected for permanent residence who may be able to apply for settled status. Those with criminal convictions or who have been removed in the past who are in prison, this is a much more complex scenario, and we will need help in order to help with those sorts of people, but we can help where it's possibly within our jurisdiction. If not, we'll refer out. And then, as I've said, people without a good social network, so people who are quite isolated, and they may not be isolated within their own communities, but they may just be isolated from the news or from social media where they may have seen adverts, or from any type of communication they may not have seen from the government. People who are expecting to return to the EU. So for instance, there may be lots of transient workers within Dorset, and it's been very hard for us to reach those people. And so we are concerned that they may be here with all the intentions to return to the EU, but they may be here after June illegally if they don't apply. And those who arrive shortly before the cut-off date, so before the end of last year, they may have trouble proving their intention to stay in the country, but we can help with that. As I've said, language barriers and literacy are a real problem for lots of people. So although we may feel, if we did the application ourselves, that it's fairly straightforward, the nuances of the language that the Home Office use are quite often very complex for people to navigate. Low digital literacy, that's especially true of older people. Cognitive disabilities, mental health disabilities, or indeed physical disabilities do make it harder for people to access help and support and to apply to the scheme. And then, as I've said, it may be difficult for people who already face a vast amount of vulnerabilities or problems within their life. Victims of domestic violence, modern slavery, rough sleepers, especially travellers, those people may find it especially difficult to apply or know that they need to apply to the scheme. Hopefully this will just help kind of make you think about people that you may know within your community who we may need to help. So how can you help? Please just communicate with people, ask them, don't be afraid to ask them. I know that nationality can seem like a bit of a hot topic, and it may be difficult to approach, but it's always okay to just say, have you heard of the EU settlement scheme? Do you think you need to apply, or does anyone you know need to apply? I need your help finding people. Please encourage engagement with us. We are here and we're not going anywhere, at least until March. And even after that date, we will always try and help people. And please disseminate as much information as you can. So we have some posters which we can distribute and you can print out and put in local spaces, and that will be really helpful to us. So referring clients to us, we accept referrals from any organisation or individual. The details are listed here. My personal email I can give to Paula, and that can be distributed if you'd like to contact me directly. As I've said, clients can text, they can phone, they can email, they can video chat. There's a number of ways that they can come forward to us, and obviously all of their details will be kept confidential. We'll just give them the level of support that they need. So I'm happy to answer any questions from you guys. Please put them in the chat bar if you have any, or come back to me later. Paula can facilitate that. But this is, again, just a prompt, you know, can you think of any ways of getting information out that we may not have approached? Do you know of anyone particularly, or communities or local businesses that we may need to speak to? So I'd like to thank you all for your time. I know this was a bit long and in depth. Hopefully I've made it a bit clearer for everyone. And yeah, nice to see you all and meet you all. Thanks very much. I'll hand back to Paula.
Lovely, thank you, Kirsty. So that's incredible. Having gone through quite a few of these presentations now, you know, you get the feeling that you know it all until you go through them in that kind of depth. And I learned quite a bit from that, Kirsty. Thank you. I think probably the overriding message is the part that we can play. And I think that was kind of the message as well that came through from my presentation first thing. We need that community effort. We need to make sure that we're there for the most vulnerable. And when we talk about things like the EU settlement scheme, we're talking perhaps about different people that are very vulnerable, but they are vulnerable members of our community, and we need to do what we can to support. So that's perhaps making sure that you've got details up in the window of your organisations, that on notice boards, that you're making sure that you're signposting to the amazing support that Kirsty and her team have got to offer. We don't know how long the funding will go on for the support that is available. We don't know if it will go right the way through until the end of the registrations for the scheme. So we really do need people to act now. And as Kirsty warned, we know that there's a backlog. So if people leave it to the last minute, they could fall off the end of the project, and they could end up having their settled status under some kind of dispute, which is the last thing we want for any of our residents. So anything that you can do in your organisation, whether it's sending out some of the notes from the presentation from Kirsty, Kirsty, if you're able to send us any flyers or anything, we'll make sure that they also go on along with the presentation, so that we've got something easy for people to print off and put up. So anything that you can do to share the message, greatly received. And as we said from our presentation first thing this morning, it is all about us pulling together, just as we have through this absolutely horrendous pandemic. So my last set of slides that I'm going to go through are talking about money. So that's always quite a nice thing to leave people on. So I'm just going to click on those now. So we've got a couple of sort of newish funds to talk about and a couple of oldies but goodies. So Ray, I'm going to ask you to do me a big favour. Actually, it's okay. I think I can see it on my paper. I always forget that the toolbar at the top cuts off the top of the slide for me, and then I can't see what the title's called. So the first fund is called Thriving Communities Programme. No, it's not. It's the Local Connections Fund. Thank you, Ray, for your little shake of the head there. That really helped me. Nothing like making it hard for yourself, is there? So Local Connections Fund, which launches on the 5th of January, and it's open for a wide range of groups and a wide range of reasons. And it's small grants, but actually don't be put off by that. If you're an organisation that is looking for more substantive money at the moment, remember that these small grants can help you look at bigger funds, which are match funded. They can help you to do pilots. They can help you to do the setting up of programs that then prove the worth for some of the larger funds. So don't be too dismissive of small funding if what you're looking for is larger funds. This is a really particularly good one. We've also got the 29th of May 1961 charity, which always looks like you're setting up for the name of the charity and they're not actually giving the name of the charity, but they're a general grant making trust. That means there is not a lengthy application process and they don't have a start and a finish date. They're looking for applications that make a good case for the support that you need, and they are available for both capital and revenue purposes. So at times like this, that can be particularly helpful. They're not necessarily looking for you to say you've got a whizzy new project, but actually that what you currently do is making a difference to people. So the links obviously to take you to the applications are the highlighted blue links when you open up the presentation for yourself. So now we come to the Thriving Communities Programme, Learning Together. And the deadline for this is the 25th of January. It's definitely worth having a look at. Now, it can seem a little bit complicated, but essentially what they're offering you is free training for you and your organisation. I think it's 2 members per organisation that can sign up for it. It's the kind of training that many of us need in building sustainable community programmes. And it's something that isn't going to be available forever. It's been extended because the numbers, as you can imagine, have been slightly lower because of COVID. So take that opportunity by the fact that it's been extended and have a look at it today. It really is worth having a look to see if, while you've maybe got staff furloughed or you've got volunteers who aren't active at the moment, that this could be an opportunity to actually embed some learning into your organisation. The Volant Charitable Trust, another charitable trust, so this makes for an easier application programme. It isn't match funding, so that's not an essential requirement. It doesn't do capital expenditure, but it is open to a wide variety of different registered charities and community groups. And then I said about an oldie but a goodie, and very often overlooked award, the Award for All from the National Lottery. And I have to say our numbers in Dorset tend to be lower than other regions. So it definitely is one that's overlooked in our area. Again, it goes up to 10,000, which is quite a substantial amount. It can feel like a lot of paperwork that you have to go through, but there isn't an end report that you have to produce at the project. So that's good. Although for auditability, the National Lottery may come back to you to ask you about your outcomes. So it should always have a record of your outcomes, but you don't need to put them into a formalised report. And the process for putting your application together is essentially, it's making a business case. And this is something that we've have a lot of resources on and a lot of support that we can give. So if you've never done an Awards for All application before, do book in to see an advisor and get some advice. It's a fairly straightforward process, so don't be put off by the length of the application. Most of it's tick box, most of it is just your details. There's one substantive page that will make the difference on whether you get the claim or not. And so putting a business case together is really important. This year, we've had to kind of keep moving our virtual funding fair. We had it planned for the end of this month, but because of the lockdown, and we know the position that many of you charities are in, that this wasn't really the right time to be offering it. We're moving it now to March. And as part of that, we will be spending time talking about your evidence of need, your business case, and actually being able to write for yourself a statement of what your charity does and what it achieves. It is really important that you can sell the benefits of what your group does, and actually should be an essential part of any business plan or any statement, mission statement, or in statement of intent, should show the benefit that your group actually makes. And some of that will be tangible, it will be in numbers, and some of it will be to do with data that you collect on how people say they feel or say what they've received and what a change it's made to them. So that kind of information is exactly what you need in order to be able to put Awards for All application together. So don't find it too daunting, and we need to get more of those made. The final one is actually a loans program, and it is worth people having a look at, particularly if your organisation is really struggling. It's based around a national emergency loan structure. It is designed to be probably the best loan that you would be able to take for your organisation. It has certain requirements within it, for example, that you have been trading for a minimum of 2 years. You need to have a turnover that is edging towards that kind of 400,000 mark to be eligible for it. But if you are a larger charity, well, medium to larger charity, and you are struggling because of reduction in your trading income, this could be what supports you over the hump of the lockdown and this particular peak that we're going through with COVID. So it's worth considering. It does close at the end of this month. So if you are thinking about it, go on now, click on the link, read the information about it and see whether it's worth finding out more. Okay, that's it from us. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, I'm going to try and stop sharing. Okay. So apart from me getting the titles of those funds mixed up, hopefully that was fairly clear. And of course, they will be available. Our slides will be available by the end of today on our website. So you'll be able to go back to them. I would also remind people that if you're a signed up member, you will receive funding updates to you in your inbox. This Thursday, our funding update goes out. Next Thursday will be our e-news, which goes out to everybody, our wider subscribers and to our members. And then the week after that, we're back to the funding alert. So if you want regular funding information from us, become a member. So go on our members page, find out about becoming a member. Thank you again to everybody for your support. It's always amazing to see so many of you, and I'm really loving how many of you had your cameras on today. It makes such a difference to me to see so many friendly faces. Take care of yourselves, keep safe, and just keep doing what you do. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.